Morning. So, old dog jump, Danny Jumping World chapter 13. When my father woke me at 6 o'clock in the morning, I knew at once this was the day of days. It was the day I longed for and the day I dreaded. It was also the day of butterflies in the stomach, except that they were worse than butterflies. They were snakes. I had stakes in the stomach the moment I opened my eyes on that Friday morning. The first thing I did after I got dressed was to hang the story clothes notice on one of the pumps. We had a quick breakfast, then the two of us sat down together at the table in the caravan to prepare the raisins. They were plump and soft and swollen from being soaked in water, and when you nicked them with a razor blade, the skin sprang open and the jelly stuff inside squeezed out as easily as you could wish. I slit the raisins while my father opened the capsules. He opened only one at a time and poured the white powder onto a piece of paper. Then he divided it into 4 tiny piles with the blade of his knife. Each pile was carefully scooped up and put into a single raisin. A needle and black cotton finished the job. Sewing up was the hardest part, and my father did most of it. It took about 2 minutes to do one raisin from start to finish. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Your mother was so wonderful at sewing things, my father said. She should have these raisins done in no time. I didn't say anything. I never knew quite what to say when he talked about my mother. Did you know she used to make all my clothes herself, Danny? Everything I wore, even socks and sweaters, I asked. Yes, he said, but those were knitted, and so quickly. When she was knitting, the needles flew so fast in her fingers you couldn't see them. They were just a blur. I would sit here in the evening watching her, and she used to talk about the children she was going to have. I shall have 3 children, she used to say. A boy for you, a girl for me, and one for good measure. There was a short silence after that. Then I said, when Mum was here, Dad, did you go out very often at night, or was it only now and then? You mean poaching? Yes, often, he said, at least twice a week. And she didn't mind? Mind? Of course she didn't mind. She came with me. She didn't. She certainly did. She came with me every single time until just before you were born. She had to stop then. She said she couldn't run fast enough. I thought about this extraordinary piece of news for a little while. Then I said, was the only reason she went because she loved you, Dad, and because she wanted to be with you, or was it because she loved poaching? Both, my father said. She did it for both reasons you mentioned. I was beginning to realize what an immense sorrow it must have been for him when she died. Weren't you afraid she might get shot up? I asked. Yes, Danny, I was, but it was marvelous to have her along. She was great support, your mother. By midday, we prepared 136 raisins. We're in good shape, my father said. Let's break for lunch. He opened the tin of baked beans and heated them up in a saucepan over a paraffin burner. I cut 2 slices of brown bread and put them on plates. My father spooned the hot baked beans over the bread, and we carried our plates outside and sat with our legs dangling over the platform of the caravan. Usually I loved baked beans on bread, but today I couldn't eat a thing. What's the matter, my father said. I'm not hungry. Don't worry, he said. The same thing happened to me the first time I went out. I was about your age then, maybe a little older. In those days, we always had hot tea in the kitchen at 5 o'clock. I can remember exactly what was on the table that evening. It was my favourite thing of all, toad in the hole. And my mum could make toad in the hole like nobody else in the world. She did it in an enormous pan with the Yorkshire pudding very brown and crisp on top, and raised up in the huge bubbly mountains. In between the mountains you could see the sausages half buried in the batter. Fantastic it was. But on that day my stomach was so jumpy I couldn't eat one mouthful. I expect yours feels like that now. Mine's full of snakes, I said. They won't stop wiggling about. Mine doesn't feel exactly normal either, my father said. Then this isn't a normal operation, is it? No, Dad, it's not. Do you know what this is, Danny? This is the most colossal and extraordinary poaching job anyone has ever in the history of the world. Don't go on about it, Dad. It only makes me more jumpy. What time do we leave here? I've worked that out, he said. We must enter the wood about 15 minutes before sunset. If we arrive after sunset, all the pheasants will have flown up to roost and it'll be too late. When is sunset? I asked. Right now it's about 7:30, he said. So we must arrive at 7:15 exactly. It's an hour and a half walk to the wood, so we must leave here at 5:45. Then we'd be better finish those raisins, I said. We've still got about 60 to do. He finished the raisins with about 2 hours to spare. They lay in a pile on a white plate in the middle of the table. Don't they look marvellous, my father said, rubbing his hands together hard. Those pheasants are going to absolutely love them. After that, we messed around in the shop until 5:30. Then my father said, that's it, it's time to get ready. We leave in 15 minutes. As we walked towards the caravan, a station wagon pulled up to the pumps of the woman at the wheel, and about 8 children in the back, all eating ice creams. Oh, I know you're closed, the woman called out through the window, but couldn't you please let me have a few gallons? I'm just about empty. She was a good-looking woman with dark hair. Give it to her, my father said. Be quick. I fetched the key from the office, unlocked one of the pumps. I filled her tank and took the money and gave her the change. You don't usually close as early as this, she said. We have to go out, I told her. Hopping from one foot to another. I have to go somewhere with my father. You look jumpy as a jackrabbit, she said. Is it a dentist? No, ma'am, I said. It's not the dentist, but please excuse me, I have to go now. Chapter 14, Into the Wood. My father came out of the caravan wearing the old blue navy sweater and the brown cloth cap with a peak pulled down low over his eyes. What's under that there, Dad? I asked, seeing the bulge at his waistline. He pulled up his sweater and showed me 2 thin, very large cotton sacks. They were bound neatly and tidy around his belly. To carry the stuff home, he said darkly. Aha! Go and put on your sweater, he said. It's brown, isn't it? Yes, I said. That'll do. But take off those white sneakers and wear your black shoes instead. I went to the caravan and changed my shoes and put on my sweater. When I came out again, my father was standing by the pumps, squinting anxiously up at the sun, which is now on only the width of a man's hand above the lime trees along the crest of the ridge on the far side of the valley. I'm ready, Dad. Good boy. Off we go. You got the raisins, I asked. In here, he said, tapping his trouser pockets where yet another bulge was shown. I've put them all in one bag. It was a calm, sunny evening with the little wisps of brilliant white cloud hanging motionless in the sky, and the valley was cool and very quiet as the 2 of us began walking together along the road that ran between the hills towards Wendover. The iron thing underneath my father's foot made a noise like a hammer striking a nail each time it hit the road. This is it, Danny. We're on our way now, he said. Oh, by golly, I wish my old dad was coming with us on this one. He'd be given his right teeth to be here at this moment. Mum too, I said. Oh yes, he said, giving a little sigh. Your mother would have loved this one. Then he said, your mother was a great one for walking, Danny, and she would always bring something home with her to brighten up the caravan. In summer it was wildflowers or grasses. When the grasses were in seed, she would make it look absolutely beautiful in a jug of water, especially with some of the stalks of wheat or barley in between. In the autumn she would pick branches of leaves, and in the winter it was berries or old man's beard. We kept going. Then he said, how do you feel, Danny? Terrific, I said, and I meant it. For although the snakes were still wiggling in my stomach, I wouldn't have swapped places with the King of Arabia at this moment. Do you think they might have dug any more of those pits for us to fall into? I asked. Don't you go worrying about pits, Danny, my father said. I'll be on the lookout for them this time. We should be very careful and very slowly once we're in the wood. How dark will it be then when we arrive? Not too dark, he said. Quite light, in fact. Then how do we stop the keepers seeing us? He said. That's the fun of the whole thing. That's what it's all about. It's hide and seek. It's the greatest game of hide and seek in the world. You mean because they've got guns? Well, he said, that does add a bit of a flavour to it. Yes. We didn't talk much after that, but as we got closer and closer to the wood, I could see my father becoming more and more twitchy as the excitement began to build up in him. He would get hold of some awful old tune. Instead of using the words, he would go tum diddly tum 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 over and over again. Then he would get hold of another tune and go pom diddly pom 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 diddly pom pom diddly pom. As he sang, he tried to keep time with the tap tap of his iron foot on the roadway. When he got tired of that, he said to me, I'll tell you something interesting about pheasants, Danny. The law says they're wild birds, so they only belong to you.